Fishing is one of these jobs that's almost a way of life. It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. It's physically hard. Hard on your body, hard on your family, hard on your social life. It's not an easy job to do and then do other things. Like some jobs you can still travel, or some jobs you can, it doesn't limit your life to that job. And so if you do it, you commit to some degree your life to doing it. So when I say I don't want my kids to go fishing, I think what I'm saying is I'd like them to have a bigger range of opportunities than I had. And if they've gone fishing, it's almost like they've taken the worst option. My name is Philip. I am a prawn creel fisherman and a representative of small-scale inshore fishermen, and I live on the West Highlands of Scotland. I started creel fishing probably 14 or 15 years old, going out on the summer holidays and the Easter holidays with my uncles and my family. And after I left school, I tried several different jobs, but I almost always, when I found myself out of work, found it quite easy to go back to the fishing industry. I knew the fishermen. I could just take a walk around the pier and see if there was any work going. I wasn't the most enthusiastic fisherman. Coming from a long line of fishermen, I could see the trajectory of the industry, but then because I had this heritage in fishing, it just made it easy. So I tried. I was a roped access technician for a couple of years. I worked chopping wood. I've worked in shops. I have tried lots of different jobs, but invariably, fishing has something to it that's it's exciting, it's dangerous. Sometimes you can make quite a lot of money, and eventually I realised, despite my best intentions, I had a bit of a passion, not just for the fishing, but for my fishing community, for the marine environment, and the best way to engage in that was to continue being a fisherman, but advocate for improved fisheries management. My grandfather was trawling, and my father was trawling as well, and then my father diversified into selling fish. So they were taking the fish they would catch on the trawler, and they were packing it up, freezing it, labelling it and selling it on. But unfortunately, the fish were one of the first victims of overfishing and poorly managed fishing. And as a consequence, my father migrated into processing shellfish. So that's taking the prawns from the trawlers, selling them into the frozen market. But again, the shellfish he was processing went the same way as the fish that he was processing previous to that, in that the quantities that were available slowly but surely declined, and the viability of the business became unviable. We've exploited and to some degree made commercially extinct almost all of the historic fisheries that were traditionally practiced around the coast of Scotland, and we are down to the last few remaining species. Certainly in the inshore, we're down to targeting almost exclusively shellfish. We've mismanaged the fishery. We've allowed methods of fishing to be used that aren't very sustainable, and we've allowed the exploitation to happen at a scale that obviously wasn't sustainable. We've seen a 98% decline in demersal finfish species. So that's all the historically targeted species, so cod, whiting, haddock, plaice, flounder, megrim, you name it. Whatever it was that was historically targeted in the inshore, the landings have declined by over 98%. Cod are at the stage in the west of Scotland of nearly being extinct, as in the remaining biomass of fish that's capable of spawning is such that it's almost too small to have a viable species. We can simplify it. Most of the fish are gone. I mean, and I don't mean like gone today and back tomorrow. I mean, like, we have wiped out abundances, levels of abundances that are hard to imagine. We have wiped out whole ecosystems and whole species have been brought to commercial extinction. You know, the herring are gone. I mean, most people, you know, can't even imagine, but once upon a time, there were 30,000 fishermen employed in Scotland solely at catching herring. And then when the herring were gone, that whole effort transitioned towards catching demersal finfish. And now there isn't a single demersal finfish fisherman left working on the whole inshore of Scotland. And the scale of this change it's hard for me to believe, but yet the people who manage fishing are not working from that premise. They're working from the premise that fishing is either sustainable or almost sustainable. They seem to be working on the premise that they want to have as least impact as possible on the fishing industry at all costs. Regardless of the consequence of that, it actually turns out to be an impact in the fishing industry. We lose the herring boats, we lose the fish boats, we lose the prawn trawlers. You know, we're going to lose it all if we don't get our act together soon.
Yeah, well, pretty much everyone in my family's at sea, you know. My brother's in the North Sea, my other brother works in fish farming, and my father's in Calmac. He's a ferry captain, you know, so. Yeah. The sea's in my blood, definitely. Well, I started this job to go and catch prawns. You know what I mean? I went to go and make money, and it was like, it's a stopgap. I wasn't gonna hang about in fishing, you know. And as I started the job working with Bally, it became very, very much more than just catching prawns. It became a really interesting, dynamic job, you know. I've been down at Plymouth, I've been here, there, and everywhere with Bally doing all sorts of like entanglement workshops and the rest of it, you know. It's just, you don't get that kind of thing in any other fishing boat. You just go to work, you catch prawns, you come home. Whereas working with Bally, it's a bigger thing, you know. I mean, it's not just going out to sea and feeding my family, you know. I worry about Bally quite a lot. He keeps himself awake all the time, and it's all he talks about, it's all he can think about. She's had strokes before, you know. So the problem with trawling is it's been left to its own devices for too long. It's been done too much, too quick. It evolved so fast, and it caught everything. It's an efficient way of catching all the fish, which is why they did it, you know, and it makes sense, I suppose, until you realise the repercussions.
What are the repercussions?
We have no fish. And it's important to stress, it's not the fishermen's fault. It really isn't. These guys are just doing their jobs, you know, trying to feed their kids. It's the guys in charge that are robbing the future generation.
My generation, we could probably get by, pay off our mortgages and even get to retirement before apocalyptic levels of you know, environmental disaster are upon us. But the reality is that I've got kids, and hopefully they're going to have kids, and I live in a community that, you know, is kind of being undermined, if not destroyed, by the lack of foresight of our forebears, and I don't think it's something we should continue. I once read a paper on the Firth of Clyde. It was called Ecological Meltdown in the Firth of Clyde, and it documented 200 years of change in the marine ecosystem in the Clyde since basically we'd introduced industrial fisheries. And it was looking at the historic abundance that was there 200 years ago, and then like how poorly we mismanaged it. And as we mismanaged each individual fishery and each individual species, we transitioned through the food chain. It's just a catalogue of ineptitude and mismanagement, and the net result is that the Clyde is now relying on nephrops and scallops as the two remaining commercial species. I mean, we threw away not just a beautiful ecosystem, but we threw away a beautiful opportunity to support employment and fishing communities into forever. And we threw it away for a couple of hundred years of grotesque amounts of wealth being accumulated and then nothing. And I think, I mean, I don't know, that's maybe the story of humans all over the place, but in fisheries it's very frustrating because when you look at it over the timelines of a couple of hundred years, it becomes so patently obvious. So we just keep repeating the process over. We find a fishery, we exploit it to unsustainable levels, it collapses, we move to a new fishery. And we keep doing this, but now the generation I'm in, we've inherited the last couple of fisheries that are even possible. There is nothing else to diversify into. Future generations are going to inherit everything we're doing, not just from us, but from all the preceding generations. You know, the world has has been radically modified.
Even just for me, I would like to see a little bit of recovery, but for my son, oh God, it's like, where do you stop? You know what I mean? It's that bad. It's like, I would like to see him, I would like full recovery, or at least as close to back to what we had, you know what I mean? Within 30 years, the damage has been done. If we could get what we had 30 years ago, and give that to my son, I would be happy.
We're condemning ourselves to a poor future, and we're also robbing our children blind. When we take natural resources and we don't manage them sustainably, we're essentially borrowing that from future generations. I resent what my father's generation borrowed from mine and grandfathers before that. Now my generation, not just the fishermen, but my whole coastal community, we have to suck it up, and then we have to take the loss that's required in order to turn things around and start going back in the right direction. And it's an unfair thing, I think, for one generation to do to the next. And it's not just in the marine environment, but as far as fishing is concerned, I think the time has long passed that we have to recognise the failures of the past and turn it around. By reinstating a 3-mile limit on the west coast of Scotland, it's arguable that we could recover the marine ecosystem to the state that it was in before we removed the 3-mile limit. I don't think anybody alive can really imagine what it could be like. I mean, if we can even just move in that direction a little bit, get a fraction of those historic abundances, we could really reinvigorate our coastal communities, and the ecosystem itself could be something really worth talking about. If you can remove the trawling and the dredging from the inshore environment, then the ecosystem would recover. We don't have to plant anything. It's not like trees. We just take a step back and the ecosystem will rewild itself. And that doesn't mean no fishing. That doesn't mean that it's like all got to be no-take zones. It means to say that you only allow the selective and low-impact forms of fishing. If you transition towards those types of fisheries in the inshore, you don't even have to lose jobs in the fishing industry or lose revenue from the fishing industry. You just swap that revenue from trawlers and dredgers to keelers and divers. It might sound like I'm blaming the trawlers and the dredgers, but they're doing what the legislation says they should be doing. The people that are responsible are the people that write the policies and the legislation. My particular relationship with Marine Scotland is reasonably adversarial in that I regularly challenge the existing fisheries management and argue that it's not fit for purpose. And I think that's an easy argument to make. They haven't even started yet. They haven't even started down this route of how do we salvage the marine environment. In fact, they've not even conceded that the marine environment is as degraded as I'm telling you it is, as the science is telling us that it is, all the evidence is telling us that it is, but yet the policies are under the impression that fisheries are sustainable.
Well, this is like the hardest part about it, is I don't understand why they fight back so hard. I really, really do not. I don't see where the gain is, it's just absolutely baffling to me. I don't know if it's financial benefit somewhere, money's in some hands or what, but it's definitely something not right.
The only people we don't seem to be able to convince are the people who are responsible. Trawlers at the moment have the monopoly on fishing opportunity, and there's no way that you can transition towards lower impact fisheries without removing some of that monopoly. So they will always be inclined to oppose any transition towards more sustainable fisheries. And the frustrating thing for us was that Marine Scotland appears to work at the behest of the trawl sector as opposed to at the behest of what we would consider to be in the public interest. If we can't do it in Scotland, if Scotland, one of the world's leading fisheries nations with a long, long heritage of fishing, if we can't produce a sustainable fishing industry, then it's probably not going to happen anywhere else in the world.
So you're going to be a fisherman, are you, like?
Probably, yeah. Probably now, I would have thought. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see how it goes.